again today. So, I want to come back and I want to talk about grief. You guys want to talk about grief? If you don't want to talk about grief, then move along. Move along, puppy dogs. Move along. So I want to talk about grief, and the reason why I want to talk about grief, because a very, 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 very dear friend of mine lost her mom yesterday. Oh, my heart breaks for her so bad. So bad. And you know what? Grief is a very funny thing. Very, very funny thing. So I'm going to take some tidbits off of a website. And I'm going to put that website in the description once the video is uploaded. And, my video's like going to be shaky. So I'm taking it off of, get this, Psych Central. Yeah. Because we're all just a little psycho. Grief makes us feel psycho though, don't it? Okay, so, girlfriend, if you come across this video, I just want you to know I absolutely love you. And, oh, girlfriend, you know how my sense of humor is, and believe me, I am not laughing at you. I'm not laughing at the situation. Absolutely not at all. I know how heartbroken you are. I know how heartbroken you are for losing your mom. I am definitely grieving right along with you. And you know what? Losing a loved one, believe me, I know how hard that hurts. I do. And grief is a very funny thing. It really is. There's so many different stages to grief. And it just like feels like it goes on and on and on and on. And like it's never gonna flip and end sometimes. So we're going to look at this site. And I wished you guys could look at it, but you know what? I'm new to this whole thing, and I don't know how to do. I hear some YouTubers talk about like that OBS or whatever it's called, and then they're like, screen share. What is that? I don't even know. So, you guys just get me for the time being and reading. But I will put the website in the description so you guys can look. But grief. Believe me, grief is real. And you know what? You can even grieve people that are alive that haven't even died. I know that for a fact because I'm grieving somebody that is alive. 5 stages of loss. 5. I believe there's more than 5. This website says there's 5, so we're going to check them out. So, the 5 stages of grief and loss. Number 1, denial and isolation. That's 2. They're saying number 1 is denial and isolation. That's 2 in 1. So, you're getting a 2 in 1 deal right there in and of itself. So, that's 2. In 1. Number 2 is anger. So there's 3 in 2. Number 3 is bargaining. Number 4 is depression. Number 5 is acceptance. And people who are grieving do not necessarily go through the stages in the same order or experience all of them. So there's 6 things in their 5 stages. So, yeah, most definitely denial and isolation. I can clearly see that. We definitely hit denial like immediately right away. I see that one. Yeah, wholeheartedly. Anger, oofda. Anger definitely hits at some point, and you know what? That anger can come and go, 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 and so can that denial. Acceptance, depending on what type of a personality type you are, that one can tend to either take a while, or if you're the type of person where you are like, you accept things in life fairly quickly, then your grieving process is probably going to go quick. You're going to be able to accept it fairly well, but that doesn't necessarily mean your grieving process is going to, go quick. I mean, the sadness is still going to be there. That's one thing that I didn't see on this list, is the sadness, because there's definitely sadness that goes along with grief. They talked about the denial, the isolation, the anger, the bargaining, depression. I suppose sadness could be classified underneath of depression. Depression to me is more of like, would fall underneath the classification of isolation, but who knows, could be the sadness. Sadness to me is crying. Okay, so I'm going to continue and read on here. It says that the stages of grief and mourning are universal and are experienced by people from all walks of life across many cultures. Mourning occurs in response to an individual's own terminal illness and loss of a close relationship, or to the death of a valued being, human or animal. There are 5 stages of grief that were first proposed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in her 1969 book on death and dying. In our bereavement, sorry for my phone shaking. In our bereavement, we spend different lengths of time working through each step and experience each stage with different levels of intensity. Contrary to popular belief, the 5 stages of loss do not necessarily occur in any specific order. We often move between stages before achieving a more peaceful acceptance of death. Many of us are not afforded the luxury of time required to achieve the final stage of grief. The death of our loved one might inspire you to evaluate your own feelings of morality. Throughout each stage, a common thread of hope emerges. As long as there is life, there is hope. As long as there is hope, there is life. Many people do not experience the stages of grief in the order listed below, which is perfectly okay and normal. The key to understanding the stages is not to feel like you must go through every one of them in precise order. Instead, it's more helpful to look at them as guides in the grieving process. It helps you understand and put into context where you are. Please keep in mind that everyone grieves differently. Yes, everyone grieves differently. Some people will wear emotions on their sleeves and be outwardly emotional. Others will experience their grief more internally and may not cry. You should try and not judge how a person experiences their grief, as each person will experience it differently. And you know what? That is so true, because I have seen some people where they did not shed a tear. They almost looked as though they didn't care. And that is true, because people do grieve differently. Some people just won't even so much as like show any form of emotion, because that's just the type of personality they are. They tend to hold it in, and they maybe do it in the privacy of their own home or when they're alone. And that's not up to us to say whether or not they're grieving properly or improperly. Just because we might be the type of person that can grieve openly and in front of other people, we can't take that away from somebody else just because they don't grieve the way we do. Or maybe we are the type of people that don't grieve openly in front of other people. So we need to keep that in mind when we are amongst other people and we're in a situation where multiple people are gathered together, and we would be expecting to be seeing multiple people grieving at one time. I definitely am remembering a time a few years back where there was an individual where I was expecting a little more than what I seen. And, I just had to remind myself that that's the way that individual has just pretty much been most of his life. I mean, he just kind of never really did show much emotion, and I just kind of left it at that. There is a few other things on here, and you know, I had to personally look into the stages of grief years back. I have gone through a lot of death in the course of my life. A lot. More so than I ever wanted to. I have had people commit suicide. I've had people die unexpectedly. I have gone to funerals back to back. Young people, old people. A majority of them unexpectedly. Some expectedly. I have had the pleasure. Why would I use the word pleasure? Death is never a pleasure. I had the opportunity one time to finally be a part of a death where it wasn't unexpected. And that was with my grandmother. She chose to go into hospice, and she was in her right frame of mind the whole time, right up to the end. That was the first time for me, and the only time for me to date. That was my very first experience to be a part of anything like that. You know, normally people like just abruptly, boom, they're gone, you know, and yeah. So, I don't do well with death. I don't. I'm going to try really, really hard not to cry on this video because I'm a pretty emotional person. I am. I'm pretty tough. A lot of people view me as a very, very strong individual, a very strong person. And for the most part, I am very strong-minded. I don't have a problem speaking my mind, but when it comes from an emotional standpoint, I do get pretty emotional. I love pretty hard, and I feel pretty deeply. And I'm going to try really hard not to cry. No guarantees, but I'm going to try. So this particular website, I don't know why I went to this one. I just did. I'll link it in the comments. So we just went through, what did we go through? The 5 stages of grief and loss. So I personally think there's more than 5. Just because I've experienced more than 5 over that, I have. But who am I to argue? I don't even, who are these? Who says this? Where'd this come from? Psych Central. Who are they? I'll link them. They go in and they describe the different deals. I will link them though. For sure. I'll link them so you guys can look. Okay, so they go on, and they also have the bereavement symptoms. I bet that's a good one to look at. Preparing for grief. Preparing for grief. Let's click on that one. That one makes me a little curious. The death of someone close to us is the most severe stressor imaginable. Bereavement brings a high risk of mental and physical health problems for a long time afterward. It does. Seriously, it does. Grieving is a completely natural process. It is, because wherever you have life, you have death. And I mean, that is just a given. But it can be profoundly painful and distressing. Occasionally, we are aware in advance that someone is reaching the end of his or her life, and in that case, the experience of grieving partially begins before their death occurs. To a certain extent, it is impossible to be prepared for the loss of a loved one. It is time for overwhelming emotions. Despite these feelings, however, it may be possible to plan ahead for this difficult time, particularly to ease any particular issues surrounding the eventual death. Okay, I'm going to quit reading here because you know what, quite honestly, I think this is a God thing that I stumbled across this website, like quite honestly. We personally are dealing with my father-in-law right now, and I'm not going to say that we are getting close to his death. I'm not going to go there right now just because we are not 100% sure in that aspect. We do know that he does got bone cancer. Next Tuesday, whatever that date is, he is going to be doing 2 tests, and then next Thursday, whatever that date is, we're going to be going over those results. So, I think I'm going to show this website to my husband. So, I'm just going to quit on that page. Like I said, the link will be in the description. So if anybody is curious and wants to look it over, it's going to be there. Preparing for grief is what we're on now. And then there's the 7 tips to help in your grief. Is grief a mental disorder? I will tell you what, when you're in the middle of grief, it definitely feels like it could be a mental disorder because grief does some very, very funny things to you mentally and emotionally. It truly does. So let's see what they have to say about that. Is grief a mental disorder? No, but it may become one. Oh, really? Imagine this scenario. Your 7-year-old son is riding his bike and takes a nasty fall. He has a gash on his knee that looks pretty bad. But you get out your first aid kit, clean the wound, put a little iodine on it, and cover it with a sterile gauze pad. 2 days later, your son complains that his knee hurts and a lot and that he feels crummy. He didn't sleep well the night before and his face feels a little flushed. You remove the gauze pad and notice that his knee is red and swollen and there is a foul-smelling greenish liquid oozing out of the wound. You get that stinking uh-oh feeling and decide you had better have your family doctor take a look at the knee. As you are about to drive off, your friendly neighbor buttonholes you and asks you where you are going. You explain the whole situation to him. He looks at you like you are from Mars and says, "Are you nuts? You want this kid to grow up to be a wimp? He is supposed to be in pain. Pain is a normal part of life. We all have to learn how to live with some pain. Redness and swelling are normal. After you bang your knee, let the kid heal up naturally. The doctor is just going to put him on some damn antibiotics, and you know the kind of side effects that those drugs have. Those doctors, you know, they just make money on all those prescriptions. Would you feel that your well-intentioned neighbor was giving you good advice? I very much doubt it. Well, it's that kind of advice some well-meaning but misinformed individuals give. When dealing with the issue of meaning but misinformed individuals, when dealing with the issue of severe grief and depression, in part, this attitude is a remnant of our Puritan roots. The idea that suffering in God's will, that is, ennobles the soul, or that is just plain good for us. Now, it is certainly true that life is full of bumps, bruises, and falls. It is also full of disappointment, sorrows, and loss. Not all of these are occasions for a medical diagnosis or professional treatment. Most are not, but these are times when a simple cut can become infected. And these are also times when so-called normal grief can become very nasty. Beasts called clinical depression. Yes, they can. Learning how to deal with disappointment and loss is part of becoming a mature human being. Coping with loss may indeed be growing, promoting experience under the right circumstances, but hanging tough and refusing to seek help in the face of overwhelming pain, physical or emotional, is an affront to our humanity. It is also potentially dangerous. I said I wasn't going to cry. Oh, the case of Jim is awfully long. Like very long. I don't even know what the case of Jim is because the case of Jim is long and then it goes on to 2 more pages. I don't know what the case of Jim is about, but I am going to go ahead and skip over that. And I almost feel like I need to explain a little bit about where my tears just about came from. I don't know. Grief and healing. Let's click on that one. Grief healing and the 1 to 2 year myth. How long is that? That one's kind of long. That one's kind of long too. Okay, so anyway, you guys, you know what? I'm no stranger to grief. I'm really not. I don't believe that grief really has an ending to it. I think for the most part, grief is just one of those things that we just kind of learn to live a different type of norm. And I don't even want to use the word normal because I don't even know what normal is. I have no idea. But we just find different ways to live without certain people in our life. You know, and it's not just people we can grieve over, you know, pets. We become very close to pets, loved ones within our life. And, you know, and what's really bringing this on for me today is, you know, like I said, a very close friend of mine, very, very close friend of mine lost her mom, and her mom was her best friend, very best friend. My heart is so broke for her, so incredibly broke, you know, and I'm grieving still over somebody that's alive. And every time I get ready to talk about that situation, I like cry through it damn near. But yeah, she's alive. I probably shouldn't go into it on this one, but there's so many different stages to grief, and I wouldn't get too dead set on which particular stage you're in. I would just allow yourself to feel the stage you're in, and don't be too hard on yourself if you feel as though if you're on a particular stage for too long, because that's just where you're meant to be. Just allow yourself to be there. It's okay. Just allow yourself to feel. You're meant to be there. There's nothing wrong with it. If you gotta cry, then cry. There's nothing wrong with crying, you know, and if you're in the anger stage, then just allow yourself to feel angry. I can remember when my brother-in-law committed suicide. I can remember I got so incredibly angry. So angry. Oh, was I mad? I was mad at him, and I was mad at God. I was mad at him because he shot himself. Then he had enough time to shoot himself a second time. And I got mad at God for allowing him to shoot himself a second time. And I screamed at God, and I screamed, why? But you know, sometimes we're not meant to understand some things, you know, and we just have to come to terms with the idea that we're just not meant to understand. And we just have to come to terms with the idea that we just have to accept that what's done is done. And we just have to be okay with the idea that that part of our life is now over, and it's time for the immersion of our new life to emerge, and now we are to continue to live on. And that's when we learn to start living without them in it and cherish all of the memories that we have. So, grief is a very funny thing. It is very funny. It causes us to do a lot of very funny things. I have been grieving since 2015, and this is 2019. It has been extremely brutal. It has been. And I've been grieving over somebody that's alive. You know, and I think maybe it's time for me to talk about that in a separate video, though, not this one, because it has caused a lot of damage. Yeah, so grief. I'm going to go ahead and link this down there. So, it's actually called psychcentral.com, psychcentral.com. Not even 100% sure how I even came across this one, but I will put it in the description. And girlfriend, if you come across this video, I love you, girlfriend. My heart goes out to you. I'm so glad you're with family, though. They're going to help you get through this, and I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And you know what? Wherever we have life, we have death. It's all part of human nature. And the grieving process, we're meant to go through it. But we're not meant to do it alone. So even though we want to go into isolation, and there's times where, you know, sometimes it is good to be able to go into that isolation, we're not meant to stay there by ourselves for too long, you know. So we have to be able to allow people to help us through that. So don't get too complacent. So thanks for tuning in to Flawed and Happy. Thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate it. And we will catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.